Coming up on 5 Minute News. Court says Trump's AG wrongly withheld facts of Russia investigation. Lindsey Graham wins reprieve from testifying in Georgia election probe. And car bomb kills daughter of prominent Russian propagandist. It's Monday, August 22. I'm Anthony Davis. The Justice Department, under former Attorney General William Barr, improperly withheld portions of an internal memo Barr cited in announcing that then-President Donald Trump had not obstructed justice in the Russia investigation, a federal appeals panel has said. At issue in the case is a March 24, 2019 memorandum from the head of the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel and another senior department official that was prepared for Barr to evaluate whether evidence in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation could support prosecution of the president for obstruction of justice. Barr has said he looked to that opinion in concluding that Trump did not illegally obstruct the Russia probe, which was an investigation of whether his campaign had colluded with Russia to tip the 2016 election. A year later, a federal judge sharply rebuked Barr's handling of the Mueller report, saying Barr had made misleading public statements to spin the investigation's findings in favor of Trump and had shown a lack of candor. The appeals court decision said the internal Justice Department memo noted that Mueller had declined to accuse President Trump of obstructing justice, specifically of obstructing justice, but had also declined to exonerate him. The internal memo said the report's failure to take a definitive position could be read to imply an accusation against President Trump if released to the public, the court wrote. Sitting presidents are generally protected from criminal charges on grounds it would undermine their ability to perform the office's constitutional duties. The Justice Department, like Mueller, took as a given that the Constitution would bar the prosecution of a sitting president, the appeals court wrote, which meant the decision that Trump wouldn't be charged had already been made and couldn't be shielded from public release. An appeals court put on hold U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham's scheduled testimony for Tuesday before a grand jury in Georgia, probing efforts by Donald Trump to overturn the former president's 2020 election defeat, with the case returning to a lower court for another look. A federal judge on Monday had rejected Graham's challenge to the subpoena to testify before the grand jury. Graham, a Republican, had argued his position as a U.S. Senator provided him immunity from having to appear before the investigative panel. Sunday's order by the Atlanta-based 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals comes as a temporary reprieve for Graham, who otherwise would have had to testify tomorrow. Testimony from Graham, a close ally of Trump, could shed further light on the coordinated effort by Trump's team to reverse the 2020 results. The appeals court gave Graham a new chance to challenge the subpoena based on protections for lawmakers under the U.S. Constitution's speech or debate clause. That provision can protect lawmakers from being compelled to discuss legislative activity. The grand jury wants to question Graham about at least 2 phone calls he made to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and his staff in the weeks following the November 2020 election, in which Graham explored the possibility of re-examining absentee ballots, according to prosecutors. The Georgia probe is one among several legal troubles faced by the former president. The special grand jury in Fulton County, Georgia, is undertaking a criminal investigation into alleged wrongdoing. Trump was recorded in a January 2nd phone call pressuring a top state official to find enough votes to overturn his loss to Biden in the state. The daughter of an influential Russian political theorist, often referred to as Putin's brain, was killed in a car bombing on the outskirts of Moscow, authorities said on Sunday. The Moscow branch of the Russian Investigative Committee said preliminary information indicated 29-year-old TV commentator Daria Dugina was killed by an explosive planted in the SUV she was driving on Saturday night. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but the bloodshed gave rise to suspicions that the intended target was her father, Alexander Dugin, a nationalist philosopher and writer. Dugin is a prominent proponent of the Russian world concept, a spiritual and political ideology that emphasizes traditional values, the restoration of Russia's power, and the unity of all ethnic Russians throughout the world. He's also a vehement supporter of Russian President Vladimir Putin's move, sending troops into Ukraine. The explosion took place as his daughter was returning from a cultural festival she had attended with him. Russian media reports cited witnesses as saying the SUV belonged to Dugin and that he had decided at the last minute to travel in another vehicle. The car bombing, unusual for Moscow, is likely to aggravate tensions between Russia and Ukraine. While Dugin's exact ties to Putin are unclear, the Kremlin frequently echoes rhetoric from his writings and appearances on Russian state TV. Dugina herself was sanctioned by the United States in March for her work as chief editor of United World International, a website that the US described as a disinformation source. The sanctions announced cited a United World article this year that contended Ukraine would perish if it were admitted to NATO. You can subscribe to 5-Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5-Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5-Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.